we exchange with each other, and it's up to each individual community as to how they see their economy working. And if you have a series of small groups that live in their little group or their little neighborhood or whatever, and exchanging with each other and sort of federating that way, you can see a broader context of how maybe an anarchist society might work.
It's a good sampling of it.
Yeah. And, and you can point to like traditional or indigenous communities or societies, is a better word, throughout the world, that might be in remote places like South America or South Pacific Seas, whatever, where there is no real hierarchy. They live in small groups. Some would call them tribes. Maybe even some of the Native American societies would fit into this, where, if there were leaders, they weren't necessarily leaders for life. And there was more, there was a lack of hierarchy. There was more exchange, direct democracy, and people it just seems like there's a lot less, what am I trying to say? There's a conflict maybe,
Right. Yeah.
And
there's a lot less conflict. There's better communication,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
People are drawing out each other's talents as opposed to trying to overtake another person and be the best. Everybody looks at each other's talents equally and gives them the proper time to help the community, not to be confused with communitarianism, which I noticed you mentioned in the intro, your intro.
Longtime listeners to Alan Watt will certainly be familiar with what communitarianism is. And when I was talking to you about who Alan was and what he thought and what he talked about, you said, "Oh, he was an anarchist."
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something about the way he conducted his business or his business business.
Yes.
And his songwriting and I said, "Oh, that's very anarchist."
Yeah.
Well, it truly, he was a person. I mean, I just cracked open one of his books there, and he says this author does not belong to any group, religion, or secret fraternity. I will not give new information as a hook whilst bending your mind into a prepared slot, enabling your handlers to form the shape of things to come. And I think that one of the reasons that your work and the way that you think resonated so much with me is that Alan would talk quite a lot all the time about the male-female union as being the initial, that's the first part of the tribe. Then you've got the family, you've got all of this. I mean, if he was in favor of anything, it was let's strengthen tribe. Tribe is not necessarily any longer, the family that you're born into, but who is your tribe? And how can you help each other? And the other thing that Alan was very known for was talking about the con of money. The con of money is an ancient con. This dates back thousands of years. And what he would say is, whatever you put between what you have and what they have, the old barter system, that's where the con comes in. Whether it's gold, silver, the so-called fiat paper money, seashells, if you've got a middleman in between you, what you have to, quote, buy or sell, in other words, you've got something to exchange. And when there's a middleman in there as part of the medium of exchange, you're being conned.
Wow.
Yeah, I would not disagree. I would definitely agree with that. And we don't get into economies or talk about economies of any kind generally on our platform because it's not an area that we have any special knowledge in. We tend to talk about other subjects, but when people do ask me about that, I defer and just say, look, I don't know, and personally, I think it's up to, like I said before, to the group or society or tribe of people and how they conduct, business with one another. And whether that's, strictly bartering, or if it's, something a friend of ours suggested, like, what was that? He had like credits that.
Right. Yeah. So a local friend here in Pittsburgh wanted to start sort of an authentic mutual aid sort of credit system. And it's something that he actually learned in Occupy Wall Street when he was, he was in Occupy San Francisco, and he happens to be from Pittsburgh. So he was, explaining that to us and how it worked pretty well in the Occupy movement. And I think that's one of the reasons that Obama unleashed, private mercenaries to crack the skulls of the Occupy movement because it was working. This sort of barter system and this sort of lack of hierarchy and working together and drawing out the talents of each individual to make the community work was a real threat to the establishment, a real threat to the state. I think now what we're dealing with, though, is this new version of an economy. If you're talking about the economy.
Yeah, the word con is an economy, right?
Yeah. Individuals are now the product. So it used to be that we had power as consumers, and we could vote with our purse or vote with where we spent our money. And now what's happened is, now that fiat currency is sort of turned upside down and capitalism has kind of run its course, human beings are now the economy by which the state and various other unelected apparatus like NGOs and those three-letter agencies up in the UN are bartering with each other, using us as the currency and mining the human body and the human mind into their own pockets, So I talk about that a lot in some of the audio broadcasts I do, where I'm very concerned about how, especially the poorer communities, specifically poorer Black communities, are becoming, victim to this con, victim to these wraparound services that hunt them for profit. So that's a big, I'm very concerned about that. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think this might be a good time to launch just a little bit, because it was listening to your work that I learned about something called zones of opportunity. And Alan's listeners are going to get this very, very easily, even if they've never heard of this, because this is NGOs at their absolute worst. And what you talked about, the hunt of the data harvesting of individuals, is the place in which they come in and take over, and down to the smallest, youngest individual in a community, where the community says, "Oh, good, this is our savior. They're here to help us," and they're not. They're not at all there to help you.
No,
exactly.
And
we live in an opportunity zone, and you'll find them throughout the country and in poor communities. And well, you want to talk about what they are?
Sure. Yes. So ultimately, and I have quite a different perspective of opportunity zones because I'm from San Francisco, and I know that the Silicon Valley set, the sort of the tech bro set, like Sean Parker, who was one of the early. He was the early investors in Facebook. He was going on and on and on about opportunity zones as sort of tax havens, for these very wealthy Silicon Valley types. Tax havens, when you think of them as something overseas, like on an island somewhere in a private bank where all the rich people hide their money. Well, there's, rich people money being hidden right here in opportunity zones right outside of your bigger cities, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, San Francisco. There's opportunity zones all over the country. And so usually in an opportunity zone, what you have are a lot of nonprofits, a lot of non-governmental organizations. There's usually a spark of a social movement organization like Black Lives Matter or trans rights that tend to pop up in opportunity zones to sort of rile people up and get them to be excited or committed to a cause of some sort. And of course, those causes are funded by social movement organizations, which are backed by foundations, so foundation money. So what you have is there's a lot of Section 8 housing too in opportunity zones, which Section 8 is the equivalent of like council housing in the United Kingdom. So it's affordable housing, which we're not against. We think, if people are struggling financially or born into poverty, then we think that some of these government subsidized programs like Section 8 housing and food support or, food stamps, those are good things. We're fine with that.
Well, if we have to live in the system that we live in, there should be something like that to help people.
Or the people.
Yeah.
The problem that we have is that these areas have now been used as a way for financial incentives
and tools of oppression
and tools of oppression. So if you're born into poverty and you're born into the Section 8 housing, then you're automatically labeled as a troubled child. You're automatically labeled as someone who is considered, quote, at risk. So in come the caseworkers, in come the foundation representatives and the liaisons to convince the mother that she needs to put her children onto certain programs, and then forever they are stamped and marked and labeled and chained as problem children. They'll never get an opportunity the way, other people get opportunities. They'll be told that they'll get opportunities if they involve themselves in these programs. But basically, it's like slavery. It's chaining these people to these systems and to these labels that it's where their recorded information on their data plan or on their that runs through the state system automatically labels them as troubled. So not to let them get too far in life, not to let them get to college or fulfill any potential that they have, redirect them into behavioral modification programs, and constantly tell them over and over again that that they'll benefit from this, that they were born bad, or that they were, that they're at risk for, getting into gangs, and maybe they're not, So I feel like a lot of this is sort of this weird self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, right.
Well, they're making tons of money at it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to do, you brought up the tech bros and the billionaires in the Bay Area, and basically it's a tax haven for them, as you said. And it allows them to make investments into a community like the one we live in. For instance, we both are from San Francisco. We moved to a neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there's a number of opportunity zones in this city. But we live in one of them. But so it's a sort of a tax haven that will allow them to invest in these types of programs or in social impact bonds and nonprofits and foundations that support these things. And what these organizations do and are about are creating these programs to keep the programs going. There's no incentive in place to get people to a place where they can be self-sufficient as long as they are dependent on the programs themselves. And I'm not talking about welfare checks. I'm talking about wraparound services,
right?
And things that say, hey, you can get a job if you apply for this program and go through these steps and do these things, and as long as you keep coming back and checking in with us and getting this training, and the training gets them only so far. The services only get them part way to where they're constantly at the behest or that they're on the hook basically with these different programs, and it makes it so that people have been put into these tracks in their lives, and they can never get out of them.
And I personally think, and I think JP agrees with me, that if you want to take a look at what the goal is for the rest of the world, for the middle class, for the managerial class, then you should probably look closely at what's going on with opportunity zones, because it's a very organized process to change behavior and change what it means to earn money, to be a contributing member of society. It really is reshaping what people think about themselves, and it's pretty insidious, because what it's doing is it's really just, when it comes down to it, it's really just normalizing the fact that you're a slave. It's a slave mentality.
Right. And we talk about this a little bit in the communitarianism video that you were talking about, but we also talk about it a little bit in our other video, another video called Lifelong Learning, where we say if you want to know what will happen to you in your life, just look at what's been going on with the poor for the last 50 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a few things that you've made me think of. One, Alan would talk a lot about scientific socialism, and I think that these zones of opportunity and the wraparound programs that's just scientific socialism. It's where an expert class comes in and runs everything about your life. You talk about these being tax havens for the billionaires. What you've described in some of your audios and videos is that lots and lots of money goes into these places. It's almost like a kind of laundering the money. It just floats in and it floats out. And you said there's exactly right. So much money going in there, they could actually solve all of the problems of that neighborhood in which that they've called an opportunity zone. But that is not the intention of it. The intention is to build this lifelong, sorry, but I'm just thinking of the teat of a cow, that the people in the community have to live off of. They can never get away. And one of the things that you mentioned in the audio that you did, The Hunted, really struck me. You said that there's behavior modification going on here. These children are being taught, this may not be the word that you used, but they're being taught right think, how to think. And
how to get their head right?
Yeah, you said it so beautifully, but you said that that's the worst thing that you can do, is take away the ability to think.
Exactly. So I was talking very specifically about a program that was recently introduced into the community we live in, and the woman who heads the nonprofit here received a $10.8 million grant, and one of the first things they brag about is taking the kids and getting their mind right in the morning before they go to school. They have to go to do a behavioral modification program, and I was just appalled. I mean, because I think that is the worst thing that a system or a technocracy or some kind of, higher class of people can do to another class of people, is to start mucking around in the brains of individuals. If you've lost your ability for choice, if you've lost your ability to actually think through on your own terms about life, even if your own thoughts lead you to making the wrong choices, that's okay too, So to have somebody else just get in there and force you into a system of thinking is like a crime against humanity. And, I don't know about, what's going on with other countries, but I know for a fact that Obama signed language into the National Defense Authorization Act that opened up giant revenue streams for behavioral modification programs. So.
Yes. Well, Obama, he had this information czar, and that's what they called him, the information czar. And I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but he wrote a book called Nudged, and I think
we talk about the nudge, in fact.
Do you?
In lifelong learning. Yeah.
Yeah. So Nudged who was that? Oh, Cass Sunstein.
That's right.
Thank you. My mind worked, actually. But Cass Sunstein was the information czar, and all it is pure and simple behavior modification.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With a good marketing program.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We talk about Cass Sunstein in a couple of our video
Do you?
essays. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Alan was from Scotland, but he had lived many years in Canada, and he was basically the big picture thinker, so he never got into nationalism or just the problems of one area. But maybe it was because he was Scottish. He did cover in a lot of depth a program that they have in Scotland called Getting It Right for Every Child, Geofencing. And this, and this is exactly what you're talking about, and it sounds so nice. We want all of our children and young people to live in an equal society and be able to flourish and have dignity. Nonsense. They want to change the way you think from, and get right in there. You're a toddler. Mm-hmm. How do you think? Yeah, no, that's not the right way to think. It's cradle to grave, tweaking with your brain, monitoring you.
Putting you into a track.
And so it's happening right now with the kids right now. So you can only imagine what this country or what the world will look like because, like you just said, Scotland has the Geofencing program. We have, the Nudge program here, and we have
what's what's it called? The school. It's science. It's science. I'm blanking too. We just talked to somebody about this. We talked to. There's a woman.
Science, math.
What is her?
STEMs.
STEM,
right.
Science, technology, and something math. And they've added
engineering.
Engineering. So science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So STEM has now been moved into STEAM. So these STEAM or STEM programs, they're all over this, all over the country. And it's driving parents crazy because parents are like, this is not how we were educated when we were children. And so I'm watching this sort of breakdown in society as these kids are, being educated through these programs. And so now, and then I think ahead, like, wow, where are we going to be in 20 years when these kids who act like robots now are going to be running the country?
Right. And then we've interviewed a woman named Lynn Taylor a few times, and she goes by
Common Core Diva.
Yeah, so the Common Core is the other thing that I think drives people crazy. And
absolutely, yeah. That's
these
terrible program.
Right. And they're all about, again, putting children into tracks. I've brought this up several times, but I mean, it starts with the testing, the standardized testing, and it follows you throughout your life. And it probably even now, especially if you're considered poor or live in a community at risk or whatever, however they label it now, whatever the kids are saying these days, that it starts even, pre-birth, like prenatal,
right?
Where they'll offer these programs to pregnant women who are at risk or in marginalized communities, and
or who are already in the system themselves.
Who are already in
they're the best target,
right? And they start monitoring the health of the mother through the birth of the child, and the child is already tracked before it's even born,
right? It's just, it's pretty insidious.
Yeah.
I think the most manipulative thing about this too is that if you listen to, yourself speak and you say things like, well, they want to, they want to claim that they're going to offer opportunity and, let's get these kids, give these kids a leg up in society and let's get them on the right track. All of that sounds really good. So
it's always feel good language.
Whenever, say, I talk to a liberal who's part of the industry that is making these things happen, and they just look at me with, they're just appalled that I would be against all of these things. I say, well, who benefits? Ultimately, who's benefiting from this? And it's the tech companies that are making billions of dollars on rolling out, little tablets for the kids to do their at-home schooling on, and where they get their little badges that tell them that they behaved well in the last program that they achieved.
Or companies in the new biotech world, like Ginkgo Bioworks, who are collecting DNA from the children in schools, and they're using that information so that children are basically their DNA that
they're putting them on a chain.
They're putting them on a chain. The children are basically the currency.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yes. Yeah.
So these people that are part of these programs, I mean, they all have sociology degrees or anthropology degrees or something, and they think that they're really doing good, and they just don't see that it's very corporate. It's a business model that's rolled out into the financialization and the cannibalization of human beings, which is nothing different than putting a human being on the auction block. I don't see any difference in this, and so I've gotten into a few arguments with academics about this, but that's what I see. And I think as a creative, I feel like it's my job to talk about it. It's my job to put it to, found art or music. And I think when I find something that rattles my cage and it keeps me up at night, such as, what's going on in opportunity zones or what's going on with biological warfare programs, you're probably going to get a video essay out of it, somehow. My creative process is quite different from JP's.
Yeah, but we still work together.
Yeah.
To develop these ideas and put them into the long form video essays that we've created over the years.
Yeah.
Which are just you kindly told me that I could re-upload a few of them, and I haven't done it yet because I'm just it's just me and but I will use this opportunity to highlight a few of them because they're thought provoking and beautiful. They're just lovely to look at, to listen to, and think of. Have the two of you come across the work of Charlotte Iserby?
Wow, I know that name.
I don't.
Why do I know that name?
She wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. She just passed away last year, just a little over a year ago, I think. But she was a senior policy advisor under Reagan in the Department of Education. And way back then, all those years ago, she came upon a program, and I actually just pulled it up because my memory's not that good, but it's called Better Education Skills Through Technology. Project Best. And she saw what she was looking at, and she said, this is getting the parents' influence out of the way. This is a socialist collectivist world at the service of big tech. And it's not good. And this was way back in the 80s that she started to talk about this. Yeah.
I feel like I've seen a trending conversation that she had with somebody from back in the 80s, like one of those, how people in social media find things from like even back in the 60s and they say, see, they were talking about it back then. I feel like I saw that from her. So
well, there's someone, I don't remember his name right now, but there was a young teacher. He's he could be in his 30s or 40s, I don't know, but he had the opportunity to spend a good deal of time with her before she passed away, and she left him a large part of her archives, if not the entire archive. And he's done an amazing series of articles that I featured on the website probably late last year, called Teach-nocracy.
Wow. Okay.
Very good series.
Yeah. Well, definitely checking that out as well. That's amazing. Yeah. Lucky him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention, if you'd like, you can take clips from some of the things that we've done if you want to use as illustrations. So you're welcome to, if you have the many hours to go and do that, it's up. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, I was thinking about music to run through this conversation, and I thought, I think I'll scavenge a bit of the music that runs through your introductory piece on Book of Hours.
good.
Yeah.
And run a little bit through here. But so I one thing I want you to talk about the creative process a little bit. But when I had a chance to speak with you, just a half an hour last week, and we were talking about creativity, and you said that the two of you just live by intuition, and this is a point where I just knew that my gut was right, because that was Alan's way. It's, the creative process and intuition, and these are guiding forces. So I loved it. But before we get into your creative process, I wanted to mention that this just popped up. You know how you open up your computer and you'll get something that they want you to look at? You're getting a nudge.
Yeah.
Well, the nudge that I got this morning was Microsoft bragging about a program that I had never heard of before. It was called Creating a More Equitable Justice System. The Microsoft Justice Reform Initiative.
Wow.
What?
Works to empower communities and drive progress towards a more equitable justice system. And I thought, oh, ding, 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 I'm going to talk to JP and Julie, and that's exact. So sure enough, I looked into it, and this is what I told you, that I had all those windows open, and then I had a computer crash right before we were going to speak. But part of this went missing. I had to go to the Wayback Machine to find it. But I think this comes out of USC, so University of Southern California in LA. And it's their social innovation program. And they are working with Microsoft on their part of the program is called the Neighborhood Data for Social Change Platform.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
They want to provide access to reliable, aggregated data at the neighborhood level. And I thought, there you go. This is the zone of opportunity, the data mining. Yeah.
So that sounds like geofencing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
I'm not familiar with that term. Tell me.
Well, it's basically aggregated. It's exactly what you described. It's aggregated data where people in very small communities, not necessarily opportunity zones, because the communities that would be geofenced are typically higher tax brackets where there's money to build into like small communities in big cities where you have everything within a 5-minute or a 15-minute walk from your front door. And then you're creating through Microsoft, you're creating, like you said, the aggregated data so that each individual is tracked. I went over to the movie theater and bought tickets, and then I went across the street and bought my groceries. And the second you get out of your little zone, your 15-minute or even 5-minute zone, you're tracked, and maybe you'll get an ad that says, don't you want to buy this, or don't you need that? And it'll pull you back into your own zone. This is like I did something called geofencing, and I used some little graphics. It's only about a minute or 2 minutes long. And the thing is, I know I have friends that live in these types of neighborhoods, and they don't think of it as like a trackable prison system. They don't think of it that way because it's so convenient for them.
Right. Well,
people will come to love their servitude. That was Aldous Huxley.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
and we all carry around our fondle blocks, and we'll use our credit cards or our debit cards, and this way of tracking people through marketing has been going on for decades. What you purchase at the grocery store, when they made it possible for you to buy groceries at the grocery store with credit cards, that was a boon to the marketing sector that was able to then track what you bought, how you and how you paid for it, of course, but like how often you bought it and what brands and what types of and it that can easily get translated into this sort of health economy that we've been that we find ourselves in now. But, the other thing too, and along the lines of consumerism and, purchasing your own prison, we did a video called Sidewalk Spy Kit.
Hey, Fear Porn fans. Tori Evening Star here, your one and only source for Amazon surveillance technology. Does the thought of 5G rollout keep you awake at night? Are you afraid of corporate overreach and tech surveillance fascism? Then grab your panic button, chicken little fans, and say hello to Amazon Sidewalk.
And, the Amazon Sidewalk program that basically, ties in your doorbell, what is that?
It's your
Ring doorbell,
yeah.
Right? With the video camera. And, the whole thing that allows them to, make deliveries to your house magically, like they can open your garage and leave a package in there. But Sidewalk is beyond that, where it's like, it uses, old-fashioned radio signals that tie into your Wi-Fi system, and the whole neighborhood is basically on surveillance. But it's not for your safety; it's for the benefit of Amazon to keep track of what's going on, and they can turn that information over to the authorities if they want to, or use it for their own purposes of like, oh, hey, somebody hasn't bought something from us for a long time. We better, get over there and market to them somehow through their Alexa or Alexa,
yeah.
Right?
So I think that when you talked about the Microsoft and you stumbled upon this link or this video about the Microsoft creating a more equitable justice system with, I think it's a focus on mental health. I think that we can tie what you accidentally stumbled upon, we can tie that in with the $10.8 million grant that this community of poverty that we live in, this opportunity zone, we can tie that in with that because there is a provision in that funding grant, in that grant, that says that they're going to hire or bring in
a consulting firm.
Well, and then officers that would just disperse violence or break up violence.
Yeah.
So I
forget what they were called, but yeah.
I think what we're going to get is a replacement of your tax paying or your police that are paid through your taxes. It's going to be replaced with with private firms is what I'm trying to say. And they're going to be tied in with these aggregated data systems so that these private security people will have, say, like a handheld device, and they'll be able to say, this neighborhood has a potential for at-risk youth, so let's target it more because based on the aggregated data. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like this is all kind of starting to come together, and it just feels like the bars are going up.
I think they're up. I think that they just want us to the savvier ones of us can see them.
Yeah.
And I don't mean savvy like, let's pat ourselves on the back, but those of us who have our eyes opened, we can see the bars now, and but they're up.